Welcome to Data Skeptic, a podcast exploring the methods, use cases, and consequences of recommender systems. Well, welcome to another installment of Data Skeptic Recommender Systems. Today we're digging into one of the trickiest problems in social media research. You can see what people click, but you can't reliably know what they've been shown. That missing piece of information shapes what we know about user preferences, echo chambers, and polarization. Most of the best-known recommender systems are in industry. They're proprietary systems, and while those teams might sometimes publish, there's no guarantee we know exactly what's going on in their production systems. Our guests today are tackling that blind spot head-on. Joining us are Sabrina, Dimitri, and Gregor, whose work explores how to infer the influence of opaque recommender systems, even when the platforms don't share their exposure data. You'll hear about their recommender-neutral user model. It's a graph-neutral approach that learns user behavior without baking in any single platform objective. Their methods allow them to simulate how different recommendation strategies would have steered users, even without the privileged access you would like to have to all the logs of the platform. We also zoom in on the stakes. Why optimizing for engagement can backfire on users. Essentially, that's Goodhart's law that we've talked about here before on the show. How feeds can accelerate polarization, and what practical fixes might look like. So if you're building, auditing, or simply living with recommender systems, this conversation offers tools and a mindset for seeing beyond that click. Let's jump right in.
I'm Sabrina Guidotti. I'm a master student in computer science at the University of Milano Bicocca.
I'm Gregor. I'm a PhD student at the University of Regensburg, which is in Germany.
And I'm Dimitri Ognibene. I am the director of the BConnect Lab in University of Milano Bicocca in Milan, Italy.
And how did your collaboration between the three of you begin?
Actually, I was a supervisor for Sabrina undergrad projects, and then she's doing also her master work with me. And Gregor, I think we met in a project about studying the impact of social media on teenagers, and Gregor did a lot of work on that.
No, yeah. And so I think Udo, who is my supervisor, he spent some time together with you in England, right? And that's where you met. And then there was this contact between the two of you, and that's where I came in.
Yeah, we were working together in UK, in Essex, for some time.
Well, we're going through on this podcast a series exploring lots of interesting research related to recommender systems. Is recommender systems a focus for any of you guys, or is this sort of fits in with a bigger scope of research?
So actually, for me, it's a very important topic. We are doing several projects on recommender systems because I think they actually can have a strong impact on user experience online. And in turn, these affect what we know about the world and the decision we take. So I spent some time working on this. We got some grants. There was this grant for Volkswagen Foundation, was called Courage. And we were trying to study actually how different recommenders would affect users' behaviors, the formation of echo chambers, filter bubbles, and so on, and how this will lead to polarized opinions. And but actually, it's very challenging because there are not many data online. So yeah, the work is going on. I think will last for quite a bit.
Are there any canonical data sets you can look at, or do you have to create your own data?
So actually, there aren't a lot of datasets about this. For now, there aren't any dataset that both record the user interaction history in a social media and which recommender system affected them. Influenced their decision. And because of this, we worked on citation dataset, in particular the BLP. And because its structure is very similar to general purpose social media, and also the data is fully available. So we used this type of data in our research.
So actually, I know there are a few data sets, but they are mostly not for social media. There are data on recommenders interaction with users on, I don't know, for example, Amazon, with reviews and things like that, but they are missing important aspect for us like social connections. That is important, no? The way you get an information, if it's coming from an advert or it's coming from your friends, really change the way you will interact or will take into account this information. So most of the data sets that are around are not really suitable for this. And this is why we are actually trying now to collect a data set. We are creating a platform to collect a data set, for example, from the Fediverse, from Mastodon platforms, so that we will have anonymized data, but we can study the impact of the recommender used on some of these platforms, because now on Fediverse, some of the platform actually use recommenders to us in classical social media. And also we are trying to collect similar data from other sources like classical social media platform, and asking users to share data after anonymization. So yeah, it's not easy to get data to tackle this problem, but as it can affect a lot of societal aspects. I was in UK, like Gregor was saying, we had the Brexit, and this affected us quite a bit. And there is all the story of Cambridge Analytica. So we want to see what was the role of the recommenders in this kind of matters, because recommenders is something we can change. If there is actually a strong impact of an algorithm, the algorithm is something you can change. Changing people, educating them is something we are trying to do, but it's much harder than changing an algorithm, I think. That's why we are trying to really push on this problem.
Yeah. One of the challenges is that all the major social media platforms are private companies, and therefore they're closed. Their data is their own. Maybe some of them have, some research affiliations or something, but not generally. Before we get into the main paper, Why Am I Seeing This? Can you say a little bit about that project?
Okay, yes, this was an international project where we participated together with the University of Regensburg, HRW, that is another university in Germany, and University of Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. There we were actually studying how to integrate educational activities into social media, and also educating teenagers to make them understand better the impact of a recommender system on their choices, of social media on their choices. There are many issues that are related to social media, but also some advantages. For example, during COVID, social media helped people being together, being connected, and this helped people. But on the other side, there are various issues like proliferation of conspiracy theories, fake news. Also, there is a lot of bullying, or there is an impact also on self-image, because people see online uh, content that seems they can relate to, like these strongly polished images of influencers, and these affect their self-image. They feel not at the same level. And so there is a lot of work to make people more resilient to the content that is shared on social media, and also teach them that when they share something on social media, they actually are going to affect other people. So sometimes we forget that social media is not only a passive process. Actually, we affect other people. So some of us are doing the bullying. We are not only receiving it, and people have to learn to not to do that. They also have to learn that when they are liking and sharing things, it will affect other people. And so that was the objective of the work. And again, because most of the data on social media platform are from private companies, and for them is very important to keep those data private, it is hard to study what is happening. So in many cases, what we have to do is to use computational models of social media dynamics, of how people take decisions, how people are affected, and try to get data to validate this model. So it's not really not really simple, but I think it's important. So we are trying to go in that direction.
Well, there's a term I was hoping I could ask you to define from the title being Why Am I Seeing This? Towards Recognizing Social Media Recommender Systems with Missing Recommendations. What is a missing recommendation?
Because when we use only observed data, we do not know which recommender system the platform actually use. So we are trying to guess which social media it's the most likely to be used in this context.
Okay, maybe I can give you an example I use often. The problem with the most of the current dataset on social media is that in many cases they only present the actions that the user took. So, for example, let's say that Instagram is showing me 1,000 pictures of cats and only one picture of dog. So if I choose cats, then the only thing that will end in most of the dataset is my choice. There is no information about this imbalance between the content I'm shown and the actions I do. So when people analyze this data and they come up with things like users prefer cats toward dogs online, if the data are skewed like this, if people are showed 1,000 cats and only one dog, it's not really the user choice. It is the consequence of the algorithm. So when we hear all these news about people behavior online, this actually should take into account what the algorithm are doing, because they are presenting the users a skewed version of reality because they are following some strategy that we don't know. And then this is what leads users' behavior, no? So what we are missing are these recommendations. We don't know usually what is being recommended. We don't know this imbalance between the 1,000 cats and the dog, one only dog feed that was presented. Okay, so it is quite challenging to get something out in this condition.
So there are many different algorithms a company might use, and I guess some companies will publish things about their methods, but they're not required to. They could have a private algorithm they're applying. How much insight do you have into the algorithms companies use?
So actually, for example, for YouTube, for some time there was quite a clear understanding of the architecture of the recommenders. Some time ago, we also had some kind of leakage of data from Twitter. I don't know if you remember that there was a story about the code where there was, if the owner of Twitter is posting this, everybody will receive it or something like that in the algorithm. But actually, in many cases, even if you have the pseudocode or the code, if you don't have like the objective function, and if you don't have the data that they are using to train it, it is very difficult to predict what's going on. Okay, because in many cases, most of these models are big neural networks, and if you don't know the reward functions of what is being improved and what is being punished, what is the objective of the algorithm, it is hard to know what is going on. A lot of work that you can find in academia about recommenders is not really about trying to predict their behavior, make it accountable or so on, but is to make it efficient. The recommender system of YouTube or Netflix, they have to answer millions and millions of users in a very fast manner over thousands of content or billions of contents. So their challenge and what they publish about is, let's say, usually performance oriented, but there is not much about the actual impact on the user, and they often consider the reward function that they're using, the objective, as not something they publish. Okay, it's like a function that we put there, and and the system will perform well on it. But we don't know. For example, there is a advertising campaign or this kind of things. It's not really easy for us to know what has been put there. I think now there have been some regulations about these kind of things. You know that the European community has been or commission, I don't know exactly who does it, has been fining some of the big companies about hidden advertisement in this kind of content. Yeah, are not the details that we really can see in the algorithms that they publish.
Maybe what I would like to add here is, um, even if they publish a paper, it there's quite a high chance that the algorithms they actually run on their platform have already changed. So I think that they are making a lot of changes to these algorithms. And for example, they're also constantly running A/B studies to check whether new components result in higher interaction on these platforms and stuff like that. So yeah, probably by the date you read a paper that was published by, I don't know, TikTok or whatever, it will already be outdated what they published about the algorithms.
That makes sense. And I have some personal experiences that lead me in that direction too. That recommender systems I've either worked on or worked at a company that had it, it's constant experimentation. What challenges does that pose for you as a researcher? How can you get a head around what people are doing when they're always changing?
So actually, this is a big challenge, and obviously, Sabrina has been working with us since not too long. And we are actually trying to simulate this kind of variations with our data. What we try to do is to create synthetic data that reproduce what will happen on a social media, changing the different recommender systems. So actually, we didn't do experiment on this, but this is something we planned. We will try to see what happens, how much an algorithm that is trying to track the recommendation algorithms will lag behind the actual recommender system that is being adopted. Because you can imagine that anyway, what is going to happen is that you estimate what is the right algorithm over a set of observation over some time, no? So before any algorithm decide that there was a switch of the recommendation algorithm, it will take some time. So this is another challenge that we study using synthetic data as we have done for the moment with static algorithms.
And can you share a few details on that synthetic data generation process? How do you develop a rich enough synthetic data set to be useful for research purposes?
To do this, we actually created a recommender neutral user model. So the goal of this is to model user behavior in a way that minimizes the influence of any specific recommender system. And we want to learn baseline behavior that isn't biased by any recommender system. And to build this, we used like an insight infosphere. So it's like a structure that approximates what a user was likely to receive certain actual recommendation, and tracking back from his actual future interaction, and identifying the paths that connect this content to him. And then we combine the information with his history to create a richer informational context. And then we train a graph neural network to predict his actual future action. And we can use this model and having as an input different type of recommender, we can recreate the possible user behavior just changing the input.
Makes sense, yeah. And then I think you've got a nice scalable process to work with in that sense. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Did you know your data is a commodity? Right now, countless data brokers are collecting your name, contact information, and even your home address to sell online. This information in the wrong hands can lead to serious problems. But removing your data will help you protect yourself from these threats. Have you ever been the victim of identity theft? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. I started using Delete Me after a close friend was harassed by someone who purchased their information online. Delete Me has given me peace of mind knowing my information is being removed from hundreds of data broker websites. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. The only way to get that 20% off is to text DATA to 64,000. That's DATA, D-A-T-A, to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. Imagine a world where AI agents collaborate as efficiently as humans do. That world is here. The Agency is an open source collective breaking down barriers between isolated AI systems. We're building the Internet of Agents, a universal collaboration layer where intelligent systems seamlessly discover, communicate, and solve complex problems together. For developers, this means freedom from proprietary limitations and access to standardized tools that work across any framework. With backing from industry leaders like Crew AI, LangChain, Lambda Index, and Cisco, we're creating the foundation for truly interoperable, multi-agent systems. The Agency isn't just releasing ideas. We're shipping code, specifications, and services ready for implementation today. Build with other engineers who care about high-quality multi-agent software. Visit agency.org and add your support. That's Agency. That's agntcy.org. Could you talk a little bit about the simulation of the user behavior? I think I have a good sense of how you can come up with the data, but how do you model the user and all the preferences they have?
I mean, for this, we use the recommender neutral user model. So, I mean, it encodes what the user preference during the learning process. So it's actually a model that learns to behave like the user under a different recommender system assumption.
Okay, so practically what Sabrina did was to learn a user model directly, straight from the data. So practically there is a graph neural network that learns to predict what will be the next preference of the next action of the user directly from data, from what will be the actual real future actions. And we feed this neural network with an input similar to what the user will actually have. And this is like his previous experience, so his previous connections, what he exchanged with other people that really fit well with the graph neural network structure, and also with the recommendations that are provided to it. So in this way, we learn a model of what the user actually does. The challenge, as I said before, is that we, during training this model, don't know what are the real recommendations that the user saw. So when we create a user model, the challenge is how you know to what the user reacted if we don't know what was suggested by the recommender. So Sabrina created what he called Insight Infosphere. So it's a simulated recommender that should be quite effective on this. And it practically takes what actually was executed in the future by the user and adds similar noisy paths that are similar content that probably the user was exposed to by the recommender. Okay, so practically imagine that from what you did till now, you have to take 3 steps to get to the next like you make because it's a friend of a friend that shares that. So the recommender to find that data should do a navigation in the connection graph that is of 3 steps. So we do similar things. We replicate these exploration paths from the user history, from the user connections for a few steps and add these similar paths to the one that actually are true. So the context that we provide to the graph neural network, to the user model, the information that the user model has is richer than the actual final information, contains information that it must learn to discard. And it must learn only to select the things that actually were really chosen by the user and learn to discard things that are similar but the user didn't consider. In this way, we can balance between content that the user is likely to be exposed by a recommender and content that actually will interact with.
And do you have a sense of what the average user thinks about recommendations? Are they even aware that they're taking place? Do they appreciate them or dislike them? What's sort of a general sentiment?
So this is, for example, a previous study we did. I think also Gregor is involved in this, and this was done with some schools, I think in Italy, but maybe in Spain too. I don't know if in Germany. So actually we had some surveys for high school students. At the same time, we had them do a game where we showed them, for example, 2 conditions. In one condition, they had content that was provided by a fair recommender, a recommender that was actually reproducing information that reflected the average distribution of this information, and another recommender that will show them information that was more similar to their opinion, and then they had to choose, make a decision on the base of type of the recommendation they got. And then we showed them that if they use this kind of biased information, they will make more errors. Okay. And the interesting thing was, yes, they learned about recommenders, they knew a bit about it, but the annoying thing is that my objective with that experiment was to lead users to be more aware of the negative impact of recommenders and ask for regulation, ask for recommenders that may be more fair and realistic with their content they present. But actually, most of the user kept wanting recommendations that are closer to what they like instead of fair recommendations. So this, I think, is a surprising feeling that even if you show that with a bias at the recommendation, you make more errors, your estimations are bad, your decisions are bad, people still prefer apparently having this biased recommendation. Okay, this was, I think, a small set was published, I think, with the title is something like Echo Chambers Affect You Too. It is a small data set, I think some 100 people, but it shows that people really like to avoid to have to look and read the things that they are not totally interested. And this is what makes us more vulnerable to social media recommendations.
Well, I think most people who work on recommender systems, and you could tell me if you disagree, but I think most of them are well intentioned. Their goal is to surface better recommendations for a user, which in theory the user should like. If they like them, they'll come back more and click more and things like that. If they don't, maybe they'll go elsewhere. Where does a negative outcome arise from? How do those errors get made?
This is not always errors. I think in many cases an issue can be the type of reward function you are trying to follow. So nowadays, most of the recommenders mix neural models that are kind of black box, so features that we don't understand of the content, with features that are a bit more clear and easy to drive. And this is how we create more explicit user models. But in the recommender for social media often are mostly based on engagement. And for example, one interesting thing is what is called, I think, flames online. You know, when there is a big fight online and people are really interacting a lot and getting upset a lot and keep fighting. And for the recommender system, this is not really different from people that are liking a new song because they are going there, commenting and interacting and spending time there. So this brings an interaction that is not really positive. People are getting more upset, more biased, more polarized. But for the recommender, it's not really easy to understand. And probably if you are just trying to maximize engagement, so how much time people spend on the social, because let's say this is what you think is good for them, is they are enjoying it, so you are trying to maximize the time you spend there. So this brings these negative effects that can happen. So yeah, I understand that who develops the algorithms for sure 90% of the cases is well intentioned, but these small dynamics can already bring a lot of issues.
And maybe also connected to what Dimitri just said, because I think that is quite interesting. When you like optimize your recommendation algorithms on the interactions or like the time that users spend on social media, it might not be the optimum for making them happy. Because I recently read this paper, which was called What Measures in a Metric, and they mentioned Goodhart's law, which essentially says when a measure becomes a target, it becomes a bad measure. So if you measure like the interactions on social media and the time that users spend there, but actually it does not make them happy anymore, it's also maybe the wrong thing to optimize on. And I think that was also one of the examples that they talked about. So I don't know what platform it was, maybe also one of the big platforms. They optimized their recommendation algorithms, and it turned out that it had negative effects on the user satisfaction, but increased the time that users spent on these platforms.
Can add two words on that. So another project we have on social media is about what is called social media addiction, but actually the technical word is different because it's not yet recognized as addiction. Is social media problematic usage, and actually yes, in the end it's just people spending too much time on social media. And we are working on recommenders that try to balance engagement. So people should use a social media platform in a sustainable manner, both for the platform and for the users. And we are not the only one. I remember there is a paper from Meta. I think one of the authors is, I think, Lorenzo Lazzaric. And they actually try to model ways to avoid the people spend too much time on social media, because the issue in that case, if they spend too much time, they may drop out because Usually when you don't manage well something, the solution is drastic. You just cut it. And this for a platform is not good too. So they want to lead people to have a balanced usage. And this is also what we are trying to do in another project.
Well, if I were working on a recommender system project and I got the results you mentioned earlier, I think it was Gregor, where the user satisfaction went down, but the time on site went up. This feels like a big conundrum because I'm worried the finance people are going to be happy with more time on site, more ads to show or something like this. But at face value, if users are less satisfied, that doesn't seem good. What advice would you give for someone who gets that result? How do they approach it?
This is a very hard question, I think. And the fact that already Meta is trying to find ways to balance this, is trying to tackle this over usage problem, means that they are in some way aware of it. And yeah, probably you have to find a solution where you maintain the platform sustainable. We are trying to do something similar, and the paper is going to be submitted in a couple of days, so I cannot say too much about it. But yeah, trying to find ways to keep people engaged with a social media platform for enough time that you can still get the money to make it run and they can keep going on with their life is, I think, something important for them. So yeah, there is interest on that, I think, now.
Do you think we can solve it with just coming up with the best possible reward function?
Reward function is not the only thing.
Or maybe there's more to it. Yeah.
Obviously, we are also working on this educational aspect where we make people aware of the complexity and the effect of social media. But I think improving the algorithmic side is important. The algorithm are very fast, they have a lot of information, and people, we are weak. I don't know. There are some papers in psychology that suggest that thinking too much, that with training and with what you call willpower, you can really fight back with addictions and other issues like that. Is a bit of wishful thinking. People get tired, and often after an effort to get out of an issue, I'm talking of other stronger forms of addiction, often they have relapse and they go back to addiction. So we need to make the environment safer for people so that it's not so easy to fall in this kind of traps, let's say. So yeah, I think the algorithm should help. The algorithm, also the interface itself. You don't need a really, I don't know, a artificial general intelligence to help you. You don't need her, as in the movie, that helps you, but you may just have a notice. Look, you have been spending here so much time. Are you sure you're going to sleep enough? I think there are these kind of nudging things that can help people realizing that they have to behave in a different way. So it is more, other than the reward, it is actually the user interface that must be helpful and lead to more healthy usage.
What role does transparency play in this process, or what role would you suggest it have?
The problem is, in many cases, like you were saying, the finance people or the interest will be a bit different from the user interests, at least in the short term. And we don't know what's going on till because we don't have any access to these recommenders. We don't know if there is any campaign that is being played. This is particularly important, for example, in politics. No, there was a lot of discussion about it, the impact of social media on elections. So being aware of how information is being shared, of how you are exposed to other people's opinion. Imagine this. It's not true that being exposed always to people with different opinion from yours is good, and it's not true also the opposite, that you are exposed to opinions similar to yours, because that is like yes men. No, if you meet yes men, you believe even more in what you already believe. But if you are exposed to people with a very different opinion than yours, you may grow even stronger biases. Imagine if you, I don't know, in Italy, soccer is very important. In Milan, we have Inter and Milan that are the two main football teams here. And practically, if you take a person that roots for Milan and put him together with people from the other football team, like with 10 people from Inter, he will not become more pro Inter. He will not like Inter more. He probably will fight more and will root even more from its previous team. So the way algorithms choose to put people together, make information flow affect the opinion dynamics. So we don't know anything about how algorithms do that. And often, even if you have a very simple, let's say, reinforcement learning algorithm that is just improving engagement over multiple time steps, we don't know what is going to happen because the dynamics becomes very hard to understand. But we don't know what is the reward. So at least we need to have that to understand what's going on and to help people to have a better life online and have less negative effects. Sorry, this looks, I think, very general, but we have, I don't know, I think we can talk of this for hours.
Sure. Yeah, at this point, it's almost a product question. How do you deliver this insight and, show some transparency to the user? And I guess maybe the platforms themselves will have to come up with a good way. But I'm curious, from your research, do you have any sense? Maybe this is an impossible question, I don't know. But do you have any sense of how users respond when offered the opportunity to see some transparency? Like the recommendation of, we didn't show you this and here's why. How do users generally respond to some feedback like that?
No, this is a very good question. And I was thinking just now that you were talking. If you remember, at the point, Twitter was losing a lot of users and they were moving to Blue Sky. And the idea was that Blue Sky was more transparent in the way it managed its recommendations. And the same thing is happening to things like Mastodon, no? So some people, maybe, but they are usually quite aware of recommender dynamics in social media. For them, it's important to have a more transparent and safe recommender. It will be nice to see about this. I think with Gregor, we did some other studies where we provided, for example, information on how reliable was the content, and we were trying to see if this would help people recognize and remember if some information was fair or not. And I don't remember now totally the result. I think we found some kind of nudging that made users more aware of how much the information we're seeing was reliable. Gregor, you may remember more than me, I think.
So I think what we did was we actually had like photos of people and it simulated like the social media environment, and the task was to like assign a label to this picture, and the participants were provided a AI generated label and another label, and they had like to choose, I think, if they trust the AI generated label. But in this experiment, I think it turned out that they didn't trust the AI generated label too much.
I think your work is groundbreaking in certain senses, that there are new ideas presented here that maybe aren't yet popular in the recommender system community. Do you have a vision for what the field will look like as they better understand and absorb your insights?
Well, I think on the algorithm side, there has been a lot of change recently. So we were proposing to use more fair reward signals for reinforcement learning based recommenders already 3, 4 years ago. Now this is happening. Again, my feeling is that a lot of money comes from having the algorithms faster and more effective than more safe and aware of the user well-being. So there is not a big change there yet. A lot depends on how much data will be available to the community and also fundings to do research. Nowadays, this is a bit changing one way or the other. So I think people are getting more aware of these issues, and the attempt to get more data will surely help other people to play with it. Because the fact that, for example, audit, you could not use many data to do audit. In these cases, we can do audit with much less data than what was available before. In most cases, they had to have simulated users interacting with recommenders for a long time, and then could say something about the recommender. In this case, we can just test the recommender without telling anything, without creating fake users and so on. So this approach is a bit more brute force, but a bit more machine learning, purely machine learning approach, and can lead people to do more challenges, define better algorithms, and you know how machine learning works. If you have a new data set, you have a new interesting problem, people play with this new game, new toy.
Hmm.
So I think this may push a bit the community in that direction. I hope so, at least.
Well, I agree with your earlier statement very strongly that probably to date, most investments have been engineering investments. Can we make it faster? Maybe can we optimize a very simple metric like click through rate? But of course, that ignores things like fairness. What are the consequences of staying on this path and not taking into consideration some of the concerns you're raising?
Well, I'm not a social scientist, I'm still an engineer, even if I do many, many things in every direction. And let's say that at the moment the world is quite crazy, no?
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, the news are scary. And if you remember, there are data showing that the polarization increased a lot. There were, I think, some data from World Bank that were suggesting that I did a talk last year about this with other professors around the world. And what they are suggesting, the biggest fear at the moment are escalation of wars and escalation of polarization that will bring not wars, but big societal issues like riots and these kind of things inside each nation. If they don't allow you to see other people's point of view, but keep showing you and pushing you, making your opinion more and more focused on just one position and not understanding the other, this contrast with other nations, with other people will get stronger. So yeah, probably this makes people make money. People fight online a lot, but I don't know in the long run how much this will pay. And so if we want to have a more peaceful and more rational social interaction, we need to be informed about other people's opinion. We need to be informed in a way that we can understand it, not only as an aggression from the other perspective. We don't want to see the other people perspective because in many cases it's presented as something that attacks your state, your opinions, and so on. And this is because in many cases, the content that gets more engagement is the one that is more annoying, is not the right word, but you understand what I mean, is things that get people more upset. And this gets more reactions and is shared more. So this doesn't help interaction and improving societal well-being. I think if we don't try to avoid this, yeah, things already went quite bad, and I think they can get worse.
Yeah, you raise an excellent point. I mean, what on the surface seems like just a little simple algorithm to surface content can potentially have a profound impact on polarization. Do you have any sense of how we measure that? How can we know to what degree polarization was algorithmically caused?
The problem is there is very little data on this. So some 2 years ago, I think Meta allowed some groups to study on data and even change recommenders during elections, but it was on a small set of participants, and in many cases was really close to the election end. So when you do that in that condition, it is too late. It is because most of the people you are contacting already have their mindset, and so you cannot see effect of the algorithm. This is something we were trying to do some time ago, but the problem of collecting data actively is it is hard because there are so many bots online, for example, no, and there is a limit on how much data you can collect just through API or through scrapping and these kind of things. So the problem is most of the data we got at the time, I think, there were a lot of bots from advertising things on Twitter and so on. But what we were trying to see, who we were trying to follow, were people that were uncertain, that we were thinking could follow both directions. For example, in Italy, there were two main parties that were apparently fighting, and at the end ended up in the government together. This was actually very funny but we were trying to follow these two separate partners. What we are saying is that we were trying to collect data on people that didn't had already a fixed mindset, were not already white or black with their opinions, and this was hard. But I think that's what you can look at when you are trying to understand what is the algorithmic impact, because I don't think that algorithms can effectively switch a person that is rooting for one football team to move to the opposite football team. It takes a lot of time. It is very hard. There are some works about this with a game called Diplomacy, where, for example, Meta was playing with a large language model and studying their capability to actually be to influence user opinions. So in that case, there are controlled studies on this. On social media, in many cases, the data we have are not completely clean, and they are too close to the end of the decision-making process that was lasting for a lot of time. And in many cases, what they did was selecting people that already were for a team and try to see if they will switch. And they will show that recommenders will not affect this. But my impression is that you don't have to focus on people that already have an opinion. You have to focus on people that are uncertain to see the impact of the recommender. So, and that is harder to do, especially if you are not the owner of the platform. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if it is enough.
No, it's good. You raise a great point. A lot of challenges for researchers in looking into these sorts of things. All right, well, let's see then. To wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you, maybe we can start with you, Sabrina. What's next for you?
The first step is get my master degree and then hopefully enter in a PhD program.
Well, very cool. I think you're off to a good start for that. Gregor, how about you? What's next for you?
Well, I'm still trying to finish my PhD. I hope that this will maybe work out by the end of next year. I hope so. And then, well, let's see. Maybe I will end up working for one of the big social media companies. I don't know.
I think that would be to their benefit, so we'll see. And last but not least, Dimitri, what's next for you?
Once you are in academia, in many cases it's hard to get out. Well, there are many ideas we are trying to follow about social media, also about large language models. So there are a lot of toys we want to play with, and we will do that quite soon. And for us, it's important to collect data about recommender system in social media. So we are call for people to share data, and we will share a website soon where people can upload their data. I have tools to anonymize it.
I think that's the crowdsourced audit we had mentioned earlier, yes?
Yes.
It's an exciting project. We'll put a link in the show notes for listeners who want to follow up.
Thank you.
It seems like it's a straightforward way to contribute their data. And with the absence of data, that'd be great for the community to get together and do.
Yes, thanks. It will be very useful.
Well, then lastly, a question for all of you. Is there anywhere listeners can follow you and your work online?
Okay, so actually I have a web page, and obviously we have a Scholar page, so that's an easy way to follow what we are doing. At the moment, my lab is kind of new, and we are creating a web page with all the resources, and a website with all the resources and the material. And these, at the moment, I cannot give you the URL because we didn't publish it yet, but I can give you later, and if you can add to the description of the show will be great. Thank you.
Sounds good, will do. And not everyone has something, but Sabrina or Gregor, any like social media or a webpage or anything you'd like to include?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And that's basically the only social media platform I'm using.
Yeah, also LinkedIn for me, it's fine.
Sounds good. Well, I'll definitely connect with both you guys there, or all three if you're on as well, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to come on and talk about the project.
Thanks, it was great. And actually we got a couple of ideas that we may try. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.